Ava
Good?
stood on the far edge of the
That's
polished
the
academy
spirit.
floor, hoping her
Right
quiet
back at
presence
you.
might blend into the noise of shuffling feet and tightening belts. But hope dissolved the moment Kale's voice cut through the room. His eyes locked on her with the easy confidence of someone who believed he owned the space. And with a smirk that felt rehearsed, he asked in front of everyone whether she was sure she hadn't accidentally entered the self-defense class for interns. A few co-workers laughed, not because the joke was funny, but because fear disguised itself well as amusement. In a place where reputation mattered more than truth, Ava kept her gaze low, the embarrassment tightening her throat. But she didn't step back. She needed this training to complete her corporate evaluation. Walking out now would give her manager, Leora, exactly the excuse she wanted to mark Ava as non-compliant again. Kale demonstrated a stance, crisp and sharp, his movements loud even in silence. Everyone copied him with varying degrees of accuracy. Ava tried too, but her timing lagged by half a beat, enough for Kale to catch it. He laughed openly now, shaking his head at her posture like she was a child pretending to be strong. He told her to relax before she sprained a muscle she didn't know existed. She tried repositioning her feet, correcting her balance, but her hands trembled slightly. Kale exaggerated a sympathetic pout, then muttered loud enough for those beside her to hear that some people just weren't built for pressure. Her co-workers exchanged glances, pretending not to enjoy the moment, but their relief was palpable, better her than them. Ava didn't defend herself. She rarely did. Months of silent endurance had taught her that confrontation only made her more vulnerable. Leora had already ensured that most people saw Ava as weak. She had quietly shifted project errors into Ava's records, changed timestamps to imply incompetence, and spread small, subtle remarks about Ava's inability to handle stress. It didn't matter that Ava secretly carried double the workload, compensating for mistakes others made. It didn't matter that she took tasks no one else wanted. In the corporate world, perception had more weight than reality, and Leora was an expert at shaping perception. Ava inhaled slowly, letting the sting of Kale's taunts settle somewhere deep where no one could see. She looked smaller than she felt, but inside her lived a quiet resilience carved by months of managing her mother's deteriorating health, unpredictable hospital nights, and the suffocating fear of losing the only family she had. Every night she returned home to check oxygen levels, adjust medication, ensure comfort, and then she logged into work at midnight to finish tasks piled unfairly onto her. She had learned to survive exhaustion without complaint, to carry emotional bruises where no one would look. Kale called for a demonstration, choosing her on purpose, wanting entertainment. He asked her to perform the basic stance again and added that he hoped she wouldn't break a bone doing it. Ava moved into position. He corrected her sharply, tapping her ankle with his foot, pushing her shoulder with a dismissive flick. She flinched but didn't protest. The room watched with the kind of attention people give car crashes not out of concern but curiosity. She felt every stare, every expectation that she would fail spectacularly. When she attempted the movement again, her foot slipped. Not enough to fall, but enough to draw another laugh from Kale. He said she moved like paperwork, slow, stiff, and unnecessary. The words struck deeper than he intended. Paperwork was the world where she quietly kept entire departments afloat. Yet no one acknowledged her. She felt invisible until she became an easy target. The tension thickened as Kale dismissed her effort, telling the class that some people were simply not built for resilience. He held her gaze as if challenging her to abandon the training and leave the room in humiliation. But Ava stayed rooted in place. Something flickered behind her tired eyes, not defiance, but endurance layered with a life of unspoken battles. She knew Kale saw none of it. People rarely noticed the weight others carried, unless it spilled out publicly. Her breath shook slightly as she returned to the line with the others. She tried to focus on the movements, but the world around her blurred into a dull mixture of judgment and noise. Her heart wasn't weak, but it was tired. Every snide remark from Leora during the past months echoed beneath Kale's cruelty. Every false accusation, every manipulated report, every late-night message disguised as urgent. They swirled together into a pressure she never voiced. As the session continued, Ava's body strained, but her mind drifted to her mother's faint smile that morning. whispering encouragement even when breathing hurt. Ava had promised her she would keep pushing forward, that she would not let the world harden her, even when it mocked her softness. That promise was the only reason she hadn't walked out the moment Kale targeted her. Kale ordered another drill, pushing the pace faster. Sweat gathered on foreheads around the room, but his sharp eyes kept flicking back to Ava, waiting for the moment he could humiliate her again. When she stumbled slightly during a fast turn, he clapped slowly with exaggerated mockery and told the class to observe what happened when someone lacked discipline. The room fell silent, the kind of silence made of discomfort rather than empathy. Ava stood there, breathing hard but steady, aware of every judgmental eye on her. Her hands trembled again, not from fear now, but from exhaustion carried far beyond this room. She knew they all saw her as fragile, soft, breakable. None of them knew the strength required to carry suffering quietly. None of them had seen her sprint through hospital corridors praying her mother would hold on. None of them saw the quiet heroism of her daily life. Kale decided to push further. He announced a paired drill and deliberately partnered himself with Ava, smirking like a man preparing for a spectacle. Ava stepped forward, chin slightly lifted despite everything. The room watched. Kale prepared to demonstrate a simple movement he expected her to fail again. But before the drill could begin, and before he could deliver another belittling remark, a trainee near the front swayed, stumbled, and collapsed heavily onto the floor. A gasp shot through the room. Kale froze for a split second, unsure whether it was a fainting spell or something more serious. The class shifted anxiously, no one moving fast enough, except Ava. Without hesitation, faster than anyone expected, she stepped forward, her posture suddenly confident, her movements precise, controlled, practiced. The room watched as the woman, Kale mocked for being fragile, reached the fallen trainee first. And in that moment, the entire academy saw something they had never seen in her. Ava knelt beside the collapsed trainee with a calmness that didn't match the panic around her. Her hands, which had trembled moments before under Kyle's ridicule, were now steady and sure as she checked the trainee's breathing, pulse, and responsiveness. She asked for space, her voice firm but gentle, and people obeyed without question. Kale hovered uncertainly, unsure whether to intervene or observe. But something in Ava's focused expression made him step back. Ava tilted the trainee's head, ensuring the airway remained clear, loosening the collar of his uniform and checking for heat exhaustion symptoms. Her movements were not hesitant. They were efficient, professional, practiced, movements that came from experience rather than instruction. She asked someone to bring water, someone else to open the windows. Her tone left no room for debate. Even Kale followed her guidance when she told him to help adjust the trainee's position. A hush swept through the room as realization dawned. This quiet, mocked woman carried knowledge and skill none of them had. The trainee slowly regained awareness, blinking weakly, and Ava coached him through slow breaths, keeping her voice low and soothing. She reassured him he would be okay, staying beside him until the color returned to his face. HR arrived moments later, alerted by an emergency text from another instructor. They rushed in, confused to find Ava, not Kale, leading the care. When they saw the fallen trainee stabilizing under her guidance, one HR representative's eyes widened with recognition. She knew Ava's background. The truth came out not through bragging or dramatic revelation, but through quiet explanation. Ava had spent years volunteering in emergency response teams. During college, performing rescues, stabilizing injured hikers, assisting paramedics during crises. She never spoke about it at work. Not because she was hiding it, but because she never thought it made her better than anyone else. She simply believed kindness didn't need announcements. Kale listened, each word striking harder than his own lessons ever had. He looked at Ava with a mixture of respect and shame, realizing how deeply he had misjudged her. His black belt meant discipline, but hers, though invisible, meant compassion forged through real suffering. He opened his mouth once, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain, but nothing he could say seemed fitting. So he stayed silent. The trainee, still weak, gripped Ava's hand and whispered thanks. That small gesture pierced the room's tension. Everyone had witnessed her shift, from the timid woman they underestimated to the calm hero they never saw coming. Leora entered shortly after, pretending concern. But her expression faltered when the recovering trainee mentioned hearing her, earlier in the hallway bragging about overloading Ava with tasks because she was too soft to fight back. HR turned sharply toward Leora, their faces darkening with recognition of a pattern they had previously dismissed. The truth landed with weight. Ava had been quietly enduring mistreatment, far worse than what happened in the training room. Ava didn't look at Leora with anger, only sadness. Sadness for someone who viewed cruelty as strength. When HR asked Ava if she wanted to file a formal complaint, she paused. Everyone waited, expecting retribution, expecting her to seize the moment. But instead she said she only wished people understood. That strength didn't require stepping on others. Her words were soft, but they hit harder than any accusation. She requested only that fairness be restored, nothing more. That quiet mercy stunned the room even more than her first aid skills. Kale stepped forward, not with arrogance now, but humility. He told Ava he had misjudged her, and though his apology was brief, it carried sincerity. He admitted that he equated loudness with strength, speed with worth, and toughness with value. But she had shown him that real resilience came from compassion under pressure, not dominance. Ava simply nodded, accepting his apology without humiliation, turning the moment into something dignified rather than vengeful. The rest of the class stared at her with a new awareness. They remembered her trembling earlier. They remembered how she absorbed cruelty without pushing it onto anyone else. The shift in the room was undeniable. Every person saw the quiet strength she carried, the kind that didn't need recognition yet commanded respect. HR escorted the trainee to the infirmary, but not before requesting Ava come by later to discuss new responsibilities that matched her previously unnoticed skill set. Leora tried to follow, but HR blocked her pathway, informing her there would be an investigation. Leora's face paled, and for the first time, she looked small, not because someone belittled her, but because her behavior finally caught up with her. As the room cleared, Kale approached Ava again, softer this time. He asked how she knew what to do so quickly. Ava could have explained the years of emergency response work, the late-night calls, the rescues she had performed in places far harsher than a corporate academy. She could have explained how, witnessing her father's workplace, accident left her determined never to freeze in moments of crisis again. But she simply said she learned because life required it of her. Kale nodded slowly, understanding more than her words said. His respect was no longer forced, it was earned and genuine. Ava returned to the line not as the weakest trainee, but as the strongest one in the room. Though her strength wasn't measured in kicks or punches, it was measured in calmness during chaos, empathy during panic, and kindness despite cruelty. The academy felt different now, quieter, heavier with reflection. Every person who had laughed earlier now avoided her eyes, not because she intimidated them, but because they felt the weight of their misjudgment. Ava didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. She simply returned to her position and waited for instructions, proving that her dignity came not from victory but from character. The remainder of the session moved with newfound humility. Kale taught with a tone more patient than before, checking on others more carefully, correcting mistakes without mockery. His pride had cracked, and through the cracks, humanity showed. When the session ended, people approached Ava one by one. Some thanked her, some apologized, some simply acknowledged her presence with a respectful nod they had never offered before. These gestures were small, but to Ava they felt like the first hints of change, a shift in a culture that had long rewarded aggression over empathy. As she packed her bag, she reflected on the day. She hadn't come to prove anything. She hadn't planned to reveal her past or expose betrayal. She only came to complete a requirement. Yet life had a way of unfolding truth when silence could no longer hide it. She walked out of the academy with the same quiet steps she arrived with, but the world around her had changed. Not dramatically, but meaningfully. The academy whispered behind her, not in mockery anymore, but in awe, repeating the moment the black belt laughed at her and the moment her kindness and courage silenced the entire room. For in the end, the strongest person present was the one who chose compassion over pride, courage over ego, and mercy over revenge. The kind of strength that doesn't shout but transforms everyone who witnesses it.